Coming up on NewsCenter tonight. Amid an ongoing nuclear deadlock and mounting speculations, leaders of South Korea and the U.S. will meet for talks on April 11th. South Korea welcomes in 2 F-35A stealth fighter jets to its fleet, becoming the 8th country in the world to have acquired combat planes that can evade radar detection. Triple decline. South Korea sees a decline in production, consumption, and investment, with overall industrial output falling by the largest margin in nearly 6 years. NewsCenter begins now.
Hello and welcome to Arirang News Center. It's 7 p.m. Friday, the 29th of March here in Seoul. I'm Noaram.
And I'm Han-daeun. Thanks for joining us. We start with major news coming out of the nation's top office. Presidents Moon Jae-in of South Korea and Donald Trump of the U.S. are scheduled to hold a summit next month in Washington for talks on North Korea's denuclearization and Seoul-Washington alliance.
That's right. After weeks of icy North Korea-U.S. relations following the failed Hanoi summit, hopes are rising the April summit could help break the nuclear impasse. Now, let's connect to our Shin Se-min standing by at the presidential office for us. Se-min, so we have the basics covered, the date and the location have been fixed. Tell us more.
Right, guys, the gears are turning again in the process of North Korea's denuclearization, the eventual denuclearization process. President Moon Jae-in will be flying to Washington in less than 2 weeks from now, from the 11th till the 12th of April, for talks with his U.S. counterpart, President Donald Trump, on the nuclear diplomacy. And in what would be their 7th face-to-face in total, and the first since the breakdown of talks between President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, the leaders Moon and Trump are likely to discuss ways to strengthen their bilateral ties and much more. Here's Presidential Secretary earlier this morning on the summit schedule.
The leaders of the two sides will hold in-depth discussions on matters to strengthen the bilateral alliance and to coordinate their positions on establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula through complete denuclearization.
And that same schedule was reiterated and confirmed by the White House, saying that the alliance between the two sides remains the linchpin of peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and in the region, and added that the visit by President Moon will strengthen the alliance and friendship between the two.
Se-min, we saw the summit coming, but the big question is, will President Moon be able to come up with a good enough deal to carry on the momentum of nuclear dialogue?
Sure, we can say that President Moon is back in the role of being a mediator between leaders Kim and Trump, especially after their most recent summit in Hanoi that ended with no concrete results over disputes of U.S.-led sanctions. And the upcoming summit between Moon and Trump is likely to give the leaders a fresh look, a chance to look at their game plan freshly as they deal with North Korea. The presidential office says a senior national security official, Kim Hyun-jin, will be visiting the White House next week or even as early as tomorrow to hone the details of the summit, possibly even their game plans. Now, still, there are a lot of blanks to be filled. We still don't know the exact schedule of the president during his visit in Washington, let alone how many times the leaders of both sides will be meeting over that short span of time that President Moon will be staying in Washington. So definitely we'll be keeping a close eye on the latest development coming in leading up to the summit in weeks to come. Back to you guys.
A busy day for you too, Se-min. Thank you for that report. Keep us posted. Following the no-deal summit in Hanoi, talks between the two Koreas have also been deadlocked.
With Presidents Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump scheduled to meet, attention now turns to what the South Korean president can do to facilitate the nuclear dialogue and get inter-Korean relations back on track. Our Park Hee-jun reports.
There's guarded optimism in Seoul about restarting dialogue between the two Koreas. According to a senior Blue House official on Friday, no official talks have taken place between the two Koreas since the summit in Hanoi. The North is believed to be evaluating that meeting and its role in it. Although it's too early to discuss another Inter-Korean summit, the official expressed hope that a meeting will take place soon and that things on the Korean Peninsula will move forward. But that depends largely on to what degree President Moon in Washington succeeds in facilitating the nuclear talks. The Hanoi summit failed because the U.S. was adamant on lifting sanctions only after North Korea's complete denuclearization, whereas the North insisted on step-by-step denuclearization and sanctions relief. Right after that meeting, President Moon was asked by President Trump to take up the mediator role, so he'll be looking for a clear solution. That will also be key in terms of Inter-Korean projects moving ahead to reopen the Kaesong Industrial Complex and resume the Mount Kumgangsan tours, both of which are currently blocked by sanctions. The upcoming summit also indicates that top-down diplomacy, that is, between the leaders themselves, is still very much intact, despite criticism that such an approach proved its limitations in Hanoi. The Blue House official says such diplomacy between the leaders is what brought the two Koreas together thus far, and that it will continue. And how that turns out will also determine the future of inter-Korean relations. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News.
And as South Korea-U.S. summit draws near, the top diplomats of both sides are also getting busy to prepare for a meeting in Washington set for tomorrow.
U.S. officials are sounding positive overall about North Korea, saying that China is also on board. Kim Mo-gyun reports.
The United States says that it's positive about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un returning to the negotiating table for talks on denuclearization. Speaking to reporters on Thursday, the U.S. State Department's deputy spokesperson, Robert Palladino, reaffirmed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's words that Washington is still optimistic, adding that diplomacy with North Korea will continue to move forward. Palladino also touched upon U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun's latest visit to China, confirming that Washington and Beijing are engaging in regular discussions on North Korea as they share the same goal of a final, fully verified denuclearization of the regime. When asked whether Biegun came to contact with any North Korean official during his visit, Palladino stopped short of saying that Washington and Pyongyang are still negotiating and didn't provide any details. Regarding concerns over the possibility that Beijing could backslide from sanctions enforcement, he stressed that China's enforcement has been very helpful, but added that there is still room for China to contribute more. Meanwhile, South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa has left for Washington to meet her counterpart Mike Pompeo on Friday afternoon local time for their first face-to-face since the Hanoi summit broke down last month. The two were expected to share their perspectives on the issue as well as inter-Korean cooperation and sanctions enforcement. South Korea's top nuclear envoy Lee Do-hun, who also left for Washington, is slated to meet with Biegun after the foreign ministerial talks. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's intelligence agency says one of North Korea's uranium enrichment facilities has been operating, quote, as normal. That apparently confirms speculation that although the regime had stopped testing weapons, it has kept its nuclear program going. The National Intelligence Service told Parliament's Intelligence Committee on Friday that the uranium enrichment facility at the Yeongbyeon nuclear complex is still being used, even though the site's 5-megawatt reactor was said to have been shut down since last year. As for the North's Dongchangni missile site, which was dismantled in July of last year, the NIS said Pyongyang has almost finished restoration of the missile launch pad. Satellite pictures had shown the North restoring the site since February before the Hanoi summit between Kim and Trump. Now, most of North Korea's staff have now returned to the Inter-Korean contact office at the border after they were abruptly pulled out a week ago. Seoul's Unification Ministry says since Thursday there have been about 9 North Korean officers working at the Joint Liaison Office, an increase from the 5 seen earlier this week. Before the withdrawal, the North had 10 officers there. Despite their return, the South and North Korean officials at the office did not meet face-to-face this morning. That's because the North's minister did not show up and the deputy minister has been absent since mid-March. The meeting is supposed to happen every Friday, but it hasn't since late last month. South Korea will start removing landmines and excavating remains of those killed from the Korean War in the DMZ next Monday. The plan was to do it with North Korea, but The North hasn't been responding. In their military agreement last September, the two sides had agreed to excavate war remains starting April 1st. Seoul had sent Pyongyang a list of the team it plans to send to the DMZ site in early March, but there has been no reply. South Korea's defense ministry says if North Korea unexpectedly turns out on Monday, it will be ready to work together. South Korea's Air Force has welcomed two F-35A stealth fighter jets, which are expected to boost the country's strategic targeting against potential enemy forces. Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
Two F-35A stealth fighter jets have arrived at Cheongju Air Base Friday from Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, giving South Korea's Air Force the capability to evade radar detection. The jets, manufactured by Lockheed Martin, will likely be assigned to South Korea's combat units in April or May. They're two of the 6 F-35A fighter jets South Korea has acquired from the U.S. as of last year. With this, South Korea becomes the third country in Asia, following Japan and Australia, and the 8th country in the world to have acquired stealth fighter jets. The South Korean military is scheduled to have a total of 10 F-35A jets ready for combat by the end of this year. Minister of Defense Acquisition Wang Jong-un says the F-35A jets are expected to increase South Korea's Air Force defense capabilities, with many saying a major shift is expected in the Air Force defense strategies as the F-35 redefines how a country goes to war. The F-35A has a top speed of Mach 1.8 and carries top-of-the-range weapons, including small precision diameter bombs that can penetrate up to 1.8 meters of concrete. It's equipped with a forward-looking infrared 360-degree cameras and an electro-optical targeting system to track and attack long-range missiles. Its ability to gather and process battlefield information gives it the edge over enemy forces and can also help it guide long-range drone aircraft to their targets. But what's more important is its stealth functions, allowing it to infiltrate enemy airspace undetected, selectively attack its target at a desired time and location, and come back to base unharmed. Following a 2014 contract, South Korea plans to deploy 40 F-35A jets by 2021 at a cost of around $6.5 billion. South Korea is considering an additional 20 more F-35A jets to bolster the country's armed forces. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Just 5 days left until South Korea holds by-elections for 2 parliamentary seats. A 2-day early voting period kicked off today, and political parties have rolled up their sleeves to support their candidates and win over voters. Kim Min-ji has this report.
Early voting has kicked off for the April 3rd by-elections. Up for grabs are 2 parliamentary seats that will represent the districts of Changwon, Seongsan, and Tongyeong-Gosang in Gyeongsang-Namdo Province. Eligible voters can cast ballots at any polling station in the 2 constituencies between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. The seat for Changwon Seongsan is vacant following the suicide last year of Noah Chan of the Minor Justice Party, while the Tongyeong-Gosang seat is empty after Lee Gun-hyun of the main opposition Liberty Korea Party was convicted of violating the political funds law. The by-elections will serve as a barometer of public sentiment ahead of next year's general elections. A poll conducted earlier this week shows the Justice Party in the first place in the Changwon-Seongsan district, followed by the Liberty Korea Party. It was initially a neck-and-neck race between the two, but the Justice Party got a boost after filing single candidacy with the ruling Democratic Party. For the Tongyeong-Gosang constituency, the Liberty Korea Party has a comfortable lead. With just days left now, it's all hands to the pump. Party chiefs have also headed to the districts in a show of support for their candidates and make the case that they are the best options. The ruling party is emphasizing economic revitalization, vowing to come up with support measures to breathe life into the regions. The 2 districts are designated as special industrial crisis response zones, as they've been hit by high unemployment amid a prolonged slump in the shipbuilding industry. The Liberty Korea Party is also trying to make an impression. It has been highlighting the shortcomings of the government, pointing to the faltering economy and stalled progress in the peace drive on the Korean Peninsula, and promoting itself as a strong alternative. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
More data pointing to a slowdown in the South Korean economy. Last month saw slides in production, consumption, and investment, with overall industrial output also falling by a large margin. Kim Da-mi has the numbers.
Economic indicators for February paint a dismal outlook for the Korean economy. The country's overall industrial output tumbled 1.9% in February, the sharpest on-month decline in almost 6 years. Auto production saw an on-month drop of 3.2% in February, and industrial output was also affected by falling semiconductor exports. The so-called triple negative, the decline in production, consumption, and investment, also revealed low investment by private corporations. Facility investment in machinery and transport equipment saw a 10.5% on-month slump in February. Retail sales, an indicator of consumption, also edged down 0.5%. In addition, business outlook indicators were down for the 11th consecutive month, just 1 month less than during South Korea's IMF crisis in the late 90s.
Many experts in this business see that at the moment, Korean economic situation is almost equivalent to the IMF crisis. Investment and inventories, consumption, construction, in almost all categories, Korean economy is suffering very severe recession at the moment.
The finance ministry says it will speed up measures to boost exports and support startup ventures to try to improve the sluggish industrial output. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
A local taxi franchise business recently joined forces with Kakao Corporation and introduced a beta version of a new taxi service. Before it officially launches next month, our Ko Ryun-hee explains what changes it could bring to the society.
This is Waygo Blue, recently introduced by a Korean taxi franchise business called Tago Solutions. What's special about Waygo Blue is that it's a so-called platform taxi presented in collaboration with Kakao Mobility, the operator of the nation's largest taxi hailing app. Platform taxis aim to combine the latest information technology to vehicles, for example, putting the taxi meter on the app. Drivers who use the program cannot refuse passengers, so that's a benefit for customers. Although the fare is about $3 more than an ordinary taxi, the company says the amount could change in the future. Users of Waygo Blue can enjoy a diverse range of convenience services inside the vehicle. For instance, they can enjoy fresh air from an air purifier and charge their smartphones for free. Drivers say their daily lives have improved as well.
Because I'm a Waygo Blue driver now, I get a certain amount of pay every month. In the past, I had to pay a certain portion of my daily earnings to the operator.
Waygo Blue is the result of an agreement earlier this month between the government, the taxi industry, and Kakao Mobility. One of the main parts of that deal was that the taxi industry would launch an innovative platform taxi in the first half of this year. The vice president of Tago Solution believes this is a good start.
The new taxi means that the IT field and offline transportation businesses are collaborating, understanding each side, and seeking ways for mutual development.
However, experts say a bigger issue remains.
Although the new taxi does not allow drivers to refuse passengers, this change does not mean much in terms of shared economy or the fourth industrial revolution. They need to discuss issues related to ride-sharing and autonomous vehicles.
To make the shared economy take off, this expert said the government needs to deregulate. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
President Moon has accepted the resignation of Blue House spokesperson Kim Eui-kyum following allegations of real estate speculation. Kim purchased a $2 million building in Seoul last year with his entire fortune and a bank loan of $880,000. That building is located at an area soon to be redeveloped, which is believed to lead to millions of dollars in profit. That drew great criticism from the public, especially as it came amid President Moon's tough new real estate policies. In a text to reporters on Friday, Kim said that his wife had secretly bought the building and that things were too late to reverse by the time he had found out. But he took the blame for such actions. In Major League Baseball, pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin, known as the Korean monster of the LA Dodgers, started the new season on Thursday with a win. Our Jong-un has the story.
South Korean pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin started on the mound against the Arizona Diamondbacks on Thursday, marking the end of Clayton Kershaw's 8-season opening day starting streak for the LA Dodgers. And Ryu got off a winning start, making him the first South Korean pitcher in 18 years to win on the opening day of the MLB season. The last time a Korean pitcher tasted victory on the opening day was back when Park Chan-ho won with the Texas Rangers in 2002. Against the Diamondbacks at Dodger Stadium, Ryu Hyun-jin gave up just 1 run in 6 innings, getting 8 strikeouts to help the Dodgers win 12-5 in their opening game. After throwing 6 solid innings in the game, he said he felt zero pressure. When asked about Ryu's appearance in the season opener, an expert says it shows that team trusts the 31-year-old South Korean.
The opening game is significant as it shows how the team is approaching the new season. Although Kershaw's recent injury has provided a chance for Ryu as an opening game pitcher, it also shows that Ryu is trusted as much as the team's ace Kershaw.
Meanwhile, Ryu's teammates made the Dodgers' victory even more memorable on Thursday as they set the record for the most home runs in an opening day game. The 8 home runs also tied a team record for homers in a game, which was set back in 2002. Jong-un, Arirang News.
The South Korean government will draw up a supplementary budget to provide support for the city of Pohang, which was hit by an earthquake in late 2017. Friday's decision came after a meeting between the presidential office, government and ruling party. The government is expected to submit an extra budget bill to the National Assembly next month. The bill will also include funds to fight the country's fine dust air pollution. General Motors Korea has signed an initial deal with a consortium of auto parts makers to sell its shuttered plant in Kunsan. The consortium plans to turn the facility into a parts factory for electronic vehicles. The acquisition price reportedly reached $180 million. The plant was shut down last May due to a low utilization rate and as part of GM's global reorganization plan. New duty-free stores to open soon at Incheon International Airport. They'll be Korea's first in the arrivals area. The customs service says the shops will be opened by SM duty-free and NTAS duty-free at Terminals 1 and 2 at the end of May. Having duty-free stores for returning travelers would alleviate the inconvenience of them carrying around goods bought before departing Korea. A loop road that circulates the entire remote island of Ulleungdo in the middle of the East Sea officially opened Friday. Residents and visitors can now get to the northern province of Cheonburi from Cheodongri province in 15 minutes, slashing more than 1 hour of car ride. That's your 3-minute news flash. News in depth coming up next.
Major announcement came out of the presidential office today. South Korean President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump will meet for talks next month in Washington. As the two are likely to make various approaches to break the nuclear impasse, hopes are high the talks could melt the ice between North Korea and the U.S. For an in-depth discussion on the issue, law professor Song Se-ryun from Kyunghee University now joins us in the studio. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
I want to start off by talking a little bit about the timing of this upcoming summit. Soon after the Hanoi summit, Presidents Moon and Trump agreed to meet as soon as possible. If they meet on April 11th as scheduled, it'll be about 6 weeks after the No-Deal Hanoi summit.
Right.
How do you assess the timing of this summit?
Well, I think it's better sooner than later. I think that the schedule reflects some sort of urgency that both parties feel. for some time, the President Trump and the Kim Jong-un has had a distinctively dynamics of negotiation there, as if they are in the negotiation table, the tit for tat and all those. So it means that President Trump feels that there has to be a keeping of the momentum for the negotiation, and there is a worry that if Kim Jong-un feels slighted because of the delay, we've seen the North resort to kind of a brinkmanship dynamics or get detached from the whole process. So I think that Donald Trump is very careful trying to contain the North on the table, and we've seen that by Donald Trump deliberately not trying to provoke North Korea by canceling the sanctions.
So sooner or later, I mean, sooner, better than
sooner.
later,
Right,
to
right.
keep up the momentum of nuclear dialogue. Now, straight after the Hanoi summit, U.S. President Trump gave a call to President Moon from Air Force One, suggesting that President Moon further negotiate with North Korea on its denuclearization. Then, can we say that the upcoming Seoul-Washington summit indicates that there may have been some kind of exchanges between South and North Korea? Because many speculate that President Moon wouldn't head to Washington empty-handed.
Right. I think the better money is on the proposition that they have already. I think that the Blue House said, in effect, no comment, which means, you know, they have had some sort of communication on that level. I think it's well advised to think that the Moon Jae-in has some sort of message from the North, but I think the more important point is what kind of message or what kind of communication he had. If it's just listening to what North is saying and relaying the message to Donald Trump, probably his role is very much at jeopardy because being a messenger or the go-between is not the role he should play at this point. If he wants to succeed as a middleman, or not the middleman, but deal maker, right, the better mediator, then he has to have some plan that both parties can make a big decision on, maybe sacrificing their positions a little, but can submit or agree to the bigger goal, which is to make the deal a success.
Now, how do you see the April 11th Seoul-Washington summit happening before an inter-Korean summit?
Right. In that sense, I think it's better, as long as there are some communications between the North and South, because, you know, summit meetings sometimes tend to be a media event, and it's all open, so it's hard to keep a very detailed conversation going. So if they are getting prepared for a kind of summit meeting between the Moon and Trump, probably there has to be a lot of details to be worked out. So if they keep the frequent and the off the TV camera kind of communication, I think it would be better.
Now, no one would deny that the main sticking point between Seoul and Washington is the big deal, small deal dilemma, is whether the two sides will be able to meet halfway on the big deal, small deal dilemma. Do you think President Moon Jae-in will be able to come up with a good enough deal this time to persuade President Trump to keep up the momentum of nuclear dialogue?
I think indeed it's the key. I worry that if it's the President Moon's goal is to find some middle point, I think his ambition is too small. It's not the matter of finding some positions that both parties can agree to. At this point, it's kind of pessimistic because both parties are sticking to their own positions. I think the homework at this point is to construct a big enough framework that both parties can make the wiggle room in terms of giving up a little and also get a lot. I think that has been missing in the negotiation because they were going through some top-down approaches exclusively. So in that sense, the President Moon's task is to get some sort of packages ready. So his role should not be just a go-between, should not be somebody who would just relay the messages so that you will say, come on, guys, come to the middle. I don't think it has worked, and I don't think it has to be his role.
Well, it sounds like a lot of pressure on President
Well,
Moon Jae-in. Now, many pundits point out that the disharmony between Seoul and Washington regarding North Korea sanctions, the U.S. looks firm to continue its maximum pressure, whereas South Korea continues to consistently voice on the need to carry on inter-Korean projects, most of which need sanctions exemptions. Do you think Presidents Moon and Trump can narrow out their differences on North Korea sanctions?
I think that's why this negotiation process has to go through some creative package-making process. If you look at those two positions, both seem to be mutually exclusive, but if we can construct a package where those sanctions and the economic cooperation or the concessions work as both a carrot and stick, but then both should not be mutually exclusive. It could be part of a larger package where one party giving up a little can guarantee the other parties much gain. So if you can see the value on that, that would be a much better solution. But I think that what has been missing is that in every step of the way, there has to be verifiability that both parties can subscribe to. Without that, no trust, and it's not going to go forward. So that's why, as you mentioned, the task is pretty big at this point.
Right. Some have questioned the effectiveness of the top-down approach of talks between the two Koreas and the U.S., especially after the no-deal Hanoi summit. What's your take on the top-down approach?
I guess it depends on how you define the top-down approach. In my thinking, the top-down approach kind of ends, the limitations ends where the summit meeting takes place. I think that's enough to say that the top-down approach has succeeded. In this situation, because we've said it several times that the devil is in the details. The peace process is very complex and multifaceted. Economic cooperation has multiple players and very complicated process. Then we have to treat it that way, which means we have to have very detailed processes, detailed contingencies in place so that both parties can kind of agree to. And there comes the incentives and carrots, those can be included. But without that, just big guys getting together and shake hands and being happy together, both like each other, I don't think we're at that stage. We have to go past that stage and come to a very comprehensive package. I would almost imagine a thick book at the end of which there's a signature page for both Trump, Kim, and also President Moon.
The April summit could be an important turning point in breaking the nuclear impasse and moving things forward. How do you think Seoul and Washington both should utilize this opportunity?
Right. The special thing about this summit is that time is running out. You cannot really continue going through another Hanoi, another Seoul, another summit meetings. I think that this is a time where they both have to make big decisions to submit to a larger package. Keep going back to the same theme, but this session has to be a strategy session where both parties come up with certain packages that both parties can subscribe to. And it's not going to be a small matter, but it requires President Trump making a decision as to what kind of verifiability they can kind of count on to give a little to the North Korea. And North Korea has to make big decisions on the denuclearization. And in order to do that, there has to be some assurances and some very detailed plan for economic cooperation.
North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee recently stated that North Korean leader will soon make an official announcement on North Korea's post-Hanoi plans. Kim Jong-un is yet to make the announcement. Do you think he will make the announcement before the Seoul-Washington summit? And what kind of plans do you think he will come up with?
Well, I think that if there were some communications between Moon and Kim, probably that's part of it. Hopefully that's part of it, because unilateral action from the North, more often than not, has been pretty disruptive force. So if they want to make an opportunity, utilize that opportunity to announce some big decisions that can be enticing to the United States, and also contributory to the making of the peace regime with the detailed sub-points, probably that's better. But if not, then my worry is that that's going to be another brinkmanship from the North, and that's not going to help any process at this point.
Before I let you go, let's slightly brush upon the regional players. Mm-hmm. What do you think China and Russia want out of this Seoul-Washington summit?
Well, we've kind of known that China has always played a role of being a backstop for North Korea, and to a lesser extent, Russia as well. Because of the tensions between the Russia and the U.S., they always want to be kind of on the side of the negotiating table. Going back to the analogy of the negotiating table, North Korea, and behind of North Korea, there's always been China, and one step backwards, there was Russia. So I think that North Korea will try to utilize the allies that he has, but also the United States will be also mindful of who's in the background and try to either get the dissension among the trade partners, but at the same time utilize North Korea or the China as a helper in the negotiation. But with the recent happenings in the trade negotiation, probably that's not going to be an easy task.
Well, I genuinely hope for some meaningful progress this time from Seoul and Washington. Thank you so much for your perspectives today.
Thank you.
It's that time in the newscast where we take a look at some of the digital media content available on Arirang's digital platform.
And today we'll look at Unni News, where some of our reporters give you the rundown on the latest stories and trends happening here in Korea.
Yes, and in this episode of Unni News, our very own Yoon Jung-min takes us through the latest business and social trends. Take a look.
Hi everyone, I'm Yoon Jung-min, a news reporter at Arirang TV, and welcome to Unni News. Fashion trend changes over the course of time, and so does business trend. The biz trend seems to reflect personal hobbies or demographic shifts in Korea. According to data by Statistics Korea, the number of private gym classes, including yoga and table tennis, nearly tripled in 4 years to more than 6,000 last year. Also, pet shops and coffee shops nearly doubled in 4 years as many people raise pets or spend time enjoying drinks. On the other hand, the number of wedding venues and private matchmakers decreased during the same period. This may indicate that fewer people tend to get married these days. Also, tobacco shops were down 28%, which might be a sign that more people quit smoking for their health. Then what would be the next business trend? What do you think? In South Korea, all able-bodied men must serve around 2 years in the army as a legacy of the 1950-53 Korean War. But the law also grants military service exemption to those who have greatly contributed to art or sports. So for example, if you are an Olympic gold medalist, you can substitute the draft by community service activities for a certain period of time. The exemption, however, has been criticized as some try to take advantage of it to intentionally avoid the draft. Last year, a football player was in the hot seat for submitting false documents to inflate his community service activities. His name is Jang Hyun-soo, one of the gold medalists for the 2014 Asian Games, who was granted exemption for winning the medal but was kicked out of the national football team for his misconduct. To prevent further scandal, the Defense Ministry is going to overhaul the current system for a few months and make a decision whether to maintain or abolish the system. We'll wait and see their decision. Arriving at the airport 2 hours before departure may not be the case anymore. Or this may even mean more time for shopping at duty-free shops. A local airport is going to launch Easy Drop service for a pilot project from the end of this month until May. If the service opens, you can drop off your luggage at a hotel in Seoul before you leave a place and find them when you arrive at your destination. So this means you don't have to stop by baggage check-in counters and get in the line and wait for hours and hours before you get on the plane. The country's main gateway, Incheon International Airport, will be joined by Cheongju Air for the project. So Cheongju Air passengers can check in at a hotel counter and claim baggage when they arrive in another country. The Transport Ministry expects to expand the service if the pilot project is successful. Hope for the best. That's all we have for today, but there is another Unni next time, so don't forget to subscribe to A+ and like this video. Bye!
It's time now to check on the weather conditions. Seems like the nation is about to get a proper wash with dust levels at normal and a round or two of rain forecast during the weekend.
That's right, and some welcome showers indeed. Let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center for us. Michelle, how is the weekend looking?
Well, good evening, guys. Now, clouds are expected to develop into rain by Saturday morning. Now, the southern regions will be overcast after morning rain, but occasional showers are expected all day tomorrow if you are in the northern areas. And most regions, including the capital, will receive 5 and 10 millimeters of precipitation, and some parts of the nation are likely to get some mix of rain and also some snow. And cooler air will arrive with the rain, bringing down the temperatures a notch or two. Seoul will kick off to 3 degrees Celsius. And daily highs in Seoul will top to 10 degrees, while Daegu, Gyeongju, and Busan and Jeju will rise into the mid-teens. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
And that wraps up this edition of Arirang News. Thank you as always for watching.
More news will be coming your way at 10 p.m. So until then, goodbye.